Hello, and thanks for joining all of us here at Blue Ridge PBS for another edition of What It Takes, where our goal is learning about our neighbors and the organizations that are deeply involved in the fabric of our community. I'm Tom Landon. For the last several months, school boards have been in the news in a whole new way. In Virginia, local school boards can be either elected or appointed, and either way, many school board meetings have become a microcosm of the divides in our society, with people turning up to voice their opinions on issues that may or may not be under the control of the people who are on the dais at the front of the room. Joining me today to talk about the role of the school board in Virginia are two experienced board members. David Wymer has recently gone off the Roanoke County Board after a distinguished career in education. His most recent stint was as an appointee who was called up after another board member left. Dr. Elizabeth Jamison serves on the Roanoke City Board and also works at Virginia Tech as an assistant professor of practice. So as we get started, I know you both very well in different contexts, but I want our viewers to get a chance to kind of know who you are. So Eli, talk about what led you to be a school board member and also, but sort of what's your background?
Sure. I have spent, in hindsight, most of my career now in fields of education. Although I started as a professional primarily in the world of organizational development focused on training and development. So from adults through now as in a governance role through children, I have found myself to be in education for a long time. But basically, most recently in kind of a merging of my professional and my academic careers, when I was wrapping up my PhD at Virginia Tech, I thought my children were graduating from city schools, and I wanted to be a contributing member to the community that I really love. And it felt like at the time there were no other academics on our board, and I thought it would be a good time to maybe offer that set of skills to our board, and that's what brought me there.
Sure, and Dave, you and I met 21 years ago now, I think. No, actually, it was longer ago than that. It was my very first job as a teacher. You were my supervisor, so that was a long time ago. Talk about your career and what led you to be a school board member at the conclusion of it.
You know, it's interesting. This past month on December the 11th, I celebrated my 50th anniversary of moving to Roanoke and began teaching in Roanoke County. And after 30 years with Roanoke County, I worked for the Department of Education in Southwest Virginia, Central Virginia, as a school improvement personnel. I have a deep respect for the role of education in children's lives, and I've endeavored throughout my career to be of assistance when I can, and what expertise I have, share with others. And when I retired from Roanoke County after a 4-year hiatus, I decided it was time to come back in the game and see what I could do to help during that period where school accreditation and student learning, was kind of at the forefront, and it's kind of my wheelhouse. So I felt comfortable doing it, and I spent 8 years, the first 2 terms, and I think we made a lot of progress during that period of time, and I think that overall it was a good experience for me, and I hope it was for the citizens in Roanoke County.
Sure, and for the students, but I just want to, start as we get started to thank you both for your service, and say that it strikes me that both of you are talented and experienced in education, organizational management. I mean, I look at the two of you with your different backgrounds and think, this is the kind of school board member we should have. So that's just my, not that you need my endorsement. So they're in, the city and the county are interesting because one has an appointed school board, one has an elected. Elizabeth, you were appointed.
Yes.
What was that process like, and did you put your name forward?
Yeah, I put my name forward. In fact, we're knee deep, I think, in the time where we're about to solicit new appointee applications. Yeah, I put my name forward. There's an application process. I talked to some of the folks I knew on city council or friends of friends who had been on the school board to find out a little bit more about it. At the time, you put your application in, and there's a first cut situation where at the time there was a lot of my first term, there was a lot of applicants. So there's a first cut, and then there was interviews, public
And they're
interviews.
applying to the city council, or who do they
They're
apply
applying, yes, thank you. They're applying to the city council, and it's a set of questions that you receive. You put your information in, and then when you get an interview, everybody gets the same set of questions, and you go to a public meeting where you answer them for the city council, and from that, then the city council uses that. And for our process, the city council really is diligent about looking at, we're so fortunate, we have so many qualified people who put their name forward. It's really, the last few rounds have been really rich with people who are talented and qualified and eager to serve. City council does a really scrupulous job of trying to figure out what are the talents and skills that they already have on their board, and what do we need to move the city forward for where our directions are, and who's gone off, who do we need, those sorts of things. Are we representative of the city writ large? Do we have people who understand the voices from across the city? So that's really the process that we go through.
And Dave, you were appointed in your last stint to fill an empty position, correct? But before that, you were elected, right? So what was that process of actually having to go before the voters like?
You know, it's a different process, but in essence, it's very similar. It's just that you have to appeal to more people. You have to present yourself to more people. It takes a lot of time and energy. There's been kind of an ebb and flow in Roanoke County in terms of open seats or contested elections. The Catawba district, which I represented, has been contested since the time that I ran. And that's a good sign. I think involvement by people within the community is important. And when people put themselves out there, people who are judging them need to understand, you know, that this person, while they can do many things, can't do all things. And that good ideas come from a lot of different areas, but no one board member has the ability to do anything. As is in the case in Roanoke County, it takes 3 votes for a majority of the board, you know, to take action on anything. So it's a process of temperament, developing a temperament within the board so that you can agree to disagree without being disagreeable, but at the same time not losing sight of the ultimate goal that you want to achieve. There are many things that we can do together. There are a few things we can do individually. So that was kind of my philosophy during the time that I spent on the board. We went through an economic downturn for the 8 years I was on the board, and budget, which is one of the primary things that boards deal with, became very, very difficult because unlike this last episode, national COVID issue, you know, there wasn't money forthcoming from the federal government or state governments or anyone else. You know, it was trying to make do with what you had in an economy that wasn't as strong as it might have been.
Right. Well, and in Virginia, and most places, but certainly in Virginia, school boards can make decisions, but they don't have the authority, or at least to tax, right? So you can't fund the things you may want to fund. Eli, as you joined the board, were there things that you hadn't thought about, or things that surprised you, or just like in terms of what the focus of a school board actually is?
Oh, yeah, so many things surprised me. I mean, I thought I had done my homework, but it's hard to know all the things that will come at you till you're sitting in that seat. Some of the things that surprised me, in terms of the budgetary thing, and to your point, is it's really important that you have a good working relationship also with your body, whether it's a board of supervisors or in our case a city council, right? Because while we have a wonderful arrangement, and the city council in Roanoke has made clear its priority on education, and so we are fortunate to have a good working relationship around the budget each and every year. We have to keep our lines of communication open in ways that I didn't realize coming into it. And also, even as an appointee, it is still a small p political process, right? You need to your point, even though I've been appointed, you have to listen to all the voices. the things that you thought you knew, you may not have known enough about, right? I mean, I had children from K through 12 graduate through this system. I was a very involved parent. I was an involved volunteer. You sit in the governance seat and you see a lot of different perspectives on a lot of different issues, and it is a wholly different role in policymaking than it is when you are volunteering at your kid's school and you see the small world. The whole world is a really different place.
And Dave, you had a long experience in a school system, but were there still some things that, as you sat in that chair, that you had to think about differently?
A lot, and it's all from matter of perspective, you know. From within, you see certain things, but once you step outside and start looking back in, you know, you might see things differently. I would comment on one thing that she mentioned, and that is funding for Roanoke County schools. And the relationship between the school board and the board of supervisors is excellent. We exceed what their requirements are in terms of funding. And several years ago, we put in place a formula so that each year, and it is a yearly process now, it's no longer 3 months, it's year round. Mm-hmm. You know what kind of funds you might be looking at regarding local taxes and so forth, and the amount of money that you're going to have, which helps you to plan not only for today, but 2 or 3 years down the road, what you might be needing to do to improve your system. I think budgeting is probably the most eye-opening thing that I had, even though I participated, as you suggested, from within. Once you see all the different pieces that have to come together to make the budget, and when you filter that through requests that are made by staff, or requests that are made by parents or community members or things of that nature, or even trends, technology. 10 years ago when we started really cranking up the technology portfolio that we had in the county, little did we realize that in 10 years we were going to go to virtual teaching, which they were able to accomplish a whole lot easier because they had a lot of the infrastructure in place. They had a lot of the technology, they had a lot of the training, they had a lot of the support materials that you need to be able to do that in an effective way. It's not as easy as people might think. You just flip the switch and you can teach technology virtually. It's a skill, and it's something that requires a lot of technology and a lot of practice.
Sure. And even prior to that, I would add cybersecurity on the technology. Before we were teaching technologically, technology has been a huge demand on us from all kinds of angles, I think.
And it's not a topic for today, but I know a lot of school divisions have been hit by ransomware attacks that'll shut down a whole division, and that it ultimately becomes the responsibility
we're all potential targets
to manage.
And the other thing, Tom, that we've learned with technology is that access is extremely important. Mm-hmm. And in Roanoke City, your geographic situation is different from Roanoke County. Roanoke County, there are places where the only way to get it is through a hotspot. Right. And who thought that we would be distributing hotspots to students? So they. Well,
the role that goes to the role of the school has changed so much. Yeah. During COVID, but also even before then, in terms of what the expectations. School divisions are really asked to do things that aren't just making sure that the teacher has the right textbooks and right. the right number of kids and is paid a fair wage. It becomes, the place where a lot of society's problems end up. I want to touch quickly because Roanoke City and Roanoke County are both unique. A lot of people in our surrounding viewing areas, their school divisions seem to be cycling through superintendents at a really rapid pace, and the average tenure of a superintendent, I think last time I checked, is certainly under 5 years, and it might be under 3. Mm-hmm. How important is it to have that kind of stability in your number one leader in a school division?
Well, we've just, in Fields recently, she's been here now for her second year, right, but it's all in COVID. We've just recently hired a new superintendent, and you know, granted, her challenges have been extraordinary because she came on smack dab in the middle of a pandemic and on the heels of a very tenured superintendent who had been here for over a decade. So kind of an unusual set of circumstances. But we are seeing now, year 2, things are rolling. If 5 years is all we get, it's going to happen in a heartbeat. With that said, I will say that the infusion of energy and ideas that we have been fortunate enough to get with this new leadership has been really extraordinary. I'm hoping we get more than 5 years out of it, though.
Right, right. It's such an important decision.
Yeah, you know, Roanoke County has a tradition of having superintendents for a long period of time, going back decades. But we are now in that situation where, you know, 5 or 6 years seems like an eternity for some of them.
It's a hard job.
Not only is it a hard job, but it's a key person in your organization, because policy making is the board's prerogative, but implementation and leadership for the board, giving options and expertise that we may not have allows us to really depend upon these people a great deal.
I want to shift a little bit just to talk about the current climate. And you know, this isn't a gotcha show, but you know, in the news lately, a lot of headlines. Sometimes the video I see on the evening news is a little bit shocking in terms of what is going on at school board meetings. And without asking you to, you know, voice your opinion on, you know, too many things, I don't know whether it's been seen a lot in Roanoke City. I know it has to a degree in Roanoke County, but when you're sitting up on that dais, and I think everybody knows what we're talking about, you know, people complaining about a variety of topics, could be related to COVID, could be related to textbooks, could be related to the library, all kinds of things. But it's the tone of it that has been, I think, really shaken a lot of people. Eli, I know a lot of these meetings have been virtual because of COVID, but you know, what are your thoughts on, in sort of a general way, on these things?
I think broadly and generally, one of the things and one of the challenges and one of the, you said things that we learn as school board members is, and in this particular moment, is staying in a place of empathy and listening no matter what. And it can be really challenging when someone is heated about an issue that they care passionately about, and it's coming at you in a rather stern manner. It's hard to do that. But from the big picture, when you get kind of your adrenaline down, people have been through a lot for 2 years, and they are exhausted. And we're talking about things that they care passionately about. And we are forced to make decisions as board members that fundamentally are coming down to pitting one set of rights against another. And people care a lot about those issues. And they're running on empty in a lot of cases when they're coming to talk to you. So I think the best thing that we can do, don't get me wrong, I wish we had civility and I wish we could implore that. But when we lose that edge, on a human, very human level, I try to just think hard about the fact that we've all been through a lot.
You know, Tom, I think one of the most important things that the board can do during this period of time, and you hear this all the time, is people need a voice. Well, we are the sounding board for that voice. And you can't take it personally. Anything that you do should always be directed toward the betterment of students and their ability to come out as graduates opportunity ready for the next 40 or 50 years of their life. And the degree to which you vary or sway from that mantra, that goal, then it takes away from your overall effectiveness. And it affects a lot of people. Not only affects the people that come to share their ideas with you, but it also affects your staff.
Yeah.
You know, we're very, very fortunate that we are not dealing with some of the staffing issues that, you know, I see and hear and read about. We're not fully staffed in all areas, but we can still function. But the key is that, and I go back to this thing about temperament, it's a two-way street. People who come need to understand what we can and can't do. We need to do all that we can,
Right.
but we need to do everything we can to acknowledge their point of view. We may not agree with it, we may not decide to go that direction, but we need to acknowledge it because to them it's important, and if it's important to them, it's important to us.
And yet I can imagine it being very frustrating when someone, when all of a sudden you have a crowd at your meeting and they are there to, it may be a hot button issue that has emerged elsewhere, might be coming from national, impetus to talk about these issues. And then when it comes time for the board to actually deliberate and talk about things like the budget and, benefits plans and all those people who showed up, they're gone by the time the board actually gets down to business. That's got to be a little bit frustrating.
I think one of the most important things that we do is it's on every agenda board meeting for parents to come. And while you're correct that there may be some hot button issues, there's nothing more hot button issue than the budget, because the budget drives everything. What you do, what you don't do, when you do, how quickly you do it, who you do it with. And it's important for them to have input to that as well. Our board and our system, reaches out, through various means, meetings with various members of the staff, whether it's in finance or instruction or administration or whatever, to try to help people understand, what is included, what we're considering, what are your thoughts about this? And you're right, sometimes we get less than the desired input until decisions are made, then we get a lot of input. But it's important.
I think I would just add to that. One of the things that has come out of the pandemic that I think is a good thing in terms of our board deliberance is that we are now on Facebook Live. And there's a lot more ways, and you can catch it on our website. You can see our board meetings. And what's shocking to me is that there's a lot more people watching our board meetings.
Right.
And so there's another avenue of social media feedback that previous boards maybe didn't get to attend to, right? This is new data for us. And that's also a reminder that sometimes the really loud voices that may not always stay to hear the rest of the conversation are not the only voices at the table. We're getting emails all the time that remind us we're employers, we're educators, we are a builder of infrastructure in our communities. We are a lot of things. Again, it's just kind of constantly remembering the perspective that, yeah, maybe those people don't stay and listen to it but there are a lot of other people who are. So
I would say if COVID's done anything, it has turned up the number of people that are actively or inactively, however you want to describe it, involved. There's a lot more information flowing, and there are a lot more conversations occurring as a result of COVID and the fact that our board just recently, I say recently, 50 years is recent, but 2 years ago, started doing the online, webcast. And it's amazing how people who don't show up to meetings, you still hear the conversations about what they saw, what they thought, what do I need to do, to be able to influence, this board. So, that's a positive. If you can get people talking, once you get people talking, then you have an avenue for expressing, suggestions, ideas that might be something that maybe hasn't been discussed yet.
I know that, some of the contentious issues have been on things like curriculum. What are you teaching to my kids? And I think there is, as somebody who's been in education a long time, I think there is a disconnect in understanding what the local board's job is in terms of implementing curriculum that may come from other places. I don't know where I'm going other than to say, do you have any thoughts on how we can teach people better about what the role of their school board, what their school board's supposed to be doing?
Well, for one thing, the Virginia Department of Education is involved heavily in curriculum. The standards of learning, which everyone knows about. The latest revision started in 1994, and it's been revised every 6 years by subject area every 6 years since then. That's important for people to know, because if they have concerns about what is being taught, how it's being taught, a lot of that can be focused in through meeting groups and opportunities for input throughout the state at regional meetings as they're doing this. The school board can develop local curriculum, but by and large, most of the curriculum which occurs in the classroom occurs as a result of state involvement.
Right.
And I would add to that, we just recently purchased brand new curriculum in the city of Roanoke at all levels for our reading curriculum. We created, and not the board, to your question of what does the board do, we were invited to go review the curriculum,
right.
but so were parents. So.
And I can't believe it. I'm getting the wrap up here, and there's a whole list of questions I didn't get to. So we're just going to have to end it there. And I'd like to thank you both for joining me today. I hope we've helped unmuddy the waters a bit when it comes just to what school boards do and why both of you chose to serve. For What It Takes, I'm Tom Landon.